Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, please subscribe. Today I'm going to talk about worm bins and setups and just overall how and why I do worms. The main reason I started was for the compost. They're castings. They turn your food scraps and junk mail and cardboard into castings. Basically they're poop, and it's supposed to be one of the best organic fertilizers you can get. I'm definitely going to be doing some experiments this spring in the garden with and without castings, but it's supposed to make your plants healthier, more bug resistant, more disease resistant, and just overall health wise the best you can do for your plants. So here's what I started out with. This is the Worm Factory 360. It comes with 4 trays, and I just did a harvest on 2 and then started a new one. And when you order the Worm Factory 360, it comes with cocoa coir, and it comes with some rock dust and quite a few other things. It's got this little spout down here at the bottom to catch any, if you got too much moisture, it'll drain out the bottom there out of that spigot. So that's something, you know, it's supposed to be an upward migration composting worm bin system, but it's quite a bit smaller than, say, the Urban Worm Bag. Okay, the Worm Factory 360, I found them online for right at $100. I think some places they're even up to $140 or so. And the Urban Worm Bag, you notice the size difference. It's quite a bit larger. It does have it's pretty much self-contained. It's got the zipper. And this is what I just put my Europeans in. And it's got a place to harvest on the bottom. It's got zipper on the bottom here where you can get your castings out of the bottom. And the Urban Worm Bag, the material it's made out of, it does hold moisture, so if you're in a high humidity place, it will definitely hold some moisture. Got a little fruit fly buzzing around. So I would recommend the Urban Worm Bag if you're in a no humidity spot for sure. It'll definitely help hold the moisture. Now they do have an option where you can buy the stand that comes with it. I think I just should have looked it up, but I'm thinking it's $10 more for the stand, or you can buy it without the stand and make your own. But I went ahead and got the one with the stand. And now we'll move on to the Vermi Bag system. They do have one that's called a mini that's quite a bit smaller than the Urban Worm Bag. And then they have a max that's about the same size as the Urban Worm Bag. Or then you can go big or go home, right? Get the Mammoth. Now it does not come with the stand, so I had to build my stand. And Tom, that does make the Vermi bags, he has a great tutorial on how to make the stand. Just went step by step to make it. I bought the 1x6s and the 2x2s for the legs. And at the time I actually built it before my Vermi bag came in because I wanted to have the stand ready. And I went ahead and bought the dowel rods, but once I got the Vermi bag, it did come with some metal rods to hold. I wasn't aware of that, so I went ahead and bought the 5/8 dowel rods. But this system altogether, with building the stand and everything, I've got close to $300 in it. But I mean, it's huge, and it's got a place on both sides for zippers for both ends to get your castings out. And then it does have 2 sides, but it's one big compartment. That's the one I've got my African night crawlers in, but it does unzip on both sides. So if you want to spend some money, if you got the money to spend, I would definitely recommend one of the continuous flow through bags. You know, the Vermi bag does have some material at the top where it won't hold as much moisture. So if you're in a high humid place, I would definitely recommend the Vermi bag. Now if you're not wanting to spend any money or just do it for cheap, just a dollar store or any Lowe's, Walmart, wherever, just a simple tote, really any size depending on how many worms. I mean, this one here is 64 quarts, so I think that's about the perfect size for say a pound of worms, or even a half a pound of worms. I mean, the idea behind it is the more space they have, hence the mammoth, why I got it, the more space they have, the more food they have, the more they're going to reproduce. And essentially, if you're, whether it's for the compost or for fishing, you want your worms to reproduce, keep multiplying. And if you see from my past videos, they have all, the red wigglers, the Europeans, and the Africans, they have all multiplied tremendously. So this is my, this one's actually a little bit bigger. This is an older tote. It's 66 quart. Like everything else, they've downsized. Same brand, just a different look. This one has snap handles. This one just has it on the lid. But this is actually my red wigglers that from my 300 cocoons. But basically, if you're wanting to do it for cheap, you just want to start out with a tote. And you can either get cocoa coir, which I can't find locally. You want to make sure it's rinsed. From what I've been told, it might have some salts in it. But I just bought, I think it was a cubic foot, but it was basically a large, it might have been 3 cubic foot. It was a pretty good sized bale of peat moss. And it's pretty dry, so you definitely want to, you know, get it going before you add your worms, and get it moist. Now if you live somewhere where they put chlorine in your water, it's a good idea, you know, if you don't want to buy water. You know, this is an old milk jug, and I've just put water in it and let it set for a few days to let the chlorine evaporate. I'm just gonna put some water in here. It does take a day or two for the peat moss to soak up water. You can see it just wants to float around, doesn't really mix. But if you do get it in there and try to get it mixed up, it will eventually soak up the water. But the ideal, what's it called, moisture level, I guess, I'm going to show you in here. Like this here, it just flakes out. I can feel the moisture. But if you don't have worms in it, they say if you squeeze it and it's just got a few drops coming out, then that's about ideal. I'm not going to squeeze this because, as you can see, I've got worms in there. But if you're wanting to do it for cheap, like I bought this big bale of peat moss, thinking it was like $9. Wasn't bad at all. The tote from the dollar store, I'm thinking, was $6. And you want to add some shredded paper or shredded cardboard, and you don't even have to do peat moss. You could just do shreds of paper and cardboard. Just make sure it's moist. But the ideal range is about 50% carbon and 50% of your greens. So your browns and greens, you want about 50% greens and 50%, or 70 brown and 30 greens, and your greens would be your food. Now, a big impact on trash. I mean, we get our trash picked up once a week, and we would always have a full trash can every week. Well, since I've been doing this since August and saving all of our junk mail, cardboards, banana peels, eggshells, any kind of vegetables. When I first started getting information on the worm bins, they were saying there's forbidden foods such as citrus and onions and peppers, but there are several other channels that have tried forbidden foods, and the worms don't seem to mind it at all. Actually like oranges and lemons. As you can see, that's already soaking up. Let me grab some shredded paper and I'll show you how I mix that up. 6 paper shredder. I'd like to get a nicer micro shredder eventually, but this is just some newspaper and toilet paper rolls. Just throw them in the shredder, shred them up, and mix it in. I mean, this is just one way to do it. Like I said, you could just do shredded paper by itself. It does seem like they do go through the peat moss a lot quicker. And then there's also people that don't want to use peat moss because of it's not a renewable resource, I've heard people say. But I can't find the cocoa coir locally, and I haven't ordered any. So anyways, basically that's a good start. You want to just mix it in, and you definitely want to let it sit for a day or two before you just add worms. And I'm just going to add this to one of my bins because I'm not ready to set up a new bin. This was actually from what I had my Europeans in before I moved them into the urban worm bag the other day. But that's just one way you can do it. And like I said, you could just, I know there's a channel that all she uses is just straight ripped up pieces of cardboard. I don't know that there's a right or a have to be right way. I mean, there's definitely wrong ways, and if you're doing it right, it should not have a smell, should not have an odor. It should smell earthy, like dirt, basically. But the main thing is to not overfeed. And I mean, they can eat this stuff. That's the plan too, is they eat both. And then you want to add a grit. Whether it be crushed eggshells or blended up eggshells into the food you're blending. And you don't have to even blend food. But I did buy a little coffee grinder and like a 50-pound bag of crushed oyster shells at a farm supply company for like $9 for 50 pounds. I might have gone through a pound or two, and it does not take much at all. But they need that grit they have a gizzard. So they need that grit, and then they also need the calcium for cocoon production. They do need air. I did not have any problems at all. I had the Europeans in this tote for 4 weeks. Didn't have any worries about crawling. But some people do with certain temperature changes, the barometric pressure changes. People have trouble with them crawling out. One way to help solve that problem is to leave a light on, because worms don't like the light. Now that Worm Factory 360, it's not a sealed system. I mean, it's good for airflow, but the worms can crawl out, and I have found them on the floor, dead of course. And then even on my red wigglers, the babies here, I haven't had any troubles with them crawling. But definitely, if you can afford a worm bag, whether it be the urban worm bag or the vermi bag, either one, they can't get out. I mean, that's one of the best things about them is that worms can't get out. They're self-contained. And see here, some of the problems with worms, raising worms, they do attract mites. Got little spider mites, or the one way I have found, I know there's a few people that use neem cake. I do use neem oil concentrate, mix it up in a 1 gallon spray bottle. I do have a video on that. And then this here is diatomaceous earth. At one time I had the mites were pretty bad in the Africans when I had them in here before I got the mammoth. But let me see if I could find a mite. I know there's still some in here. There's one right on the tip of my finger. Let's see if we can get some focus here. But they are tiny, and they seem to stay in the system, and I have no idea where they come from. I know somebody said they thought it might have came from the peat moss, but there's one right there. Little creepy crawler, see that right there? But anyways, they are a part of the composting process. I mean, they do help break down the food. And since it's a worm video, let's take a peek in on these Europeans. See how they're doing. Look like they're lively. Nice and juicy. But trying to think if there's anything else. That's the basics. But it's fun. I mean, they're like a pet. So if you're gonna do a Worm Factory 360, I think a pound is perfect to start with. I actually started with 2. I think it was a little much. The urban worm bag, I started with a pound on the Africans and a pound on the Europeans both. I think that's plenty to start with. Give them room to grow and room to reproduce. Now the mammoth, I'm thinking he said it could hold 5 pounds to 10 pounds of worms. But if you're going to start with a simple tote, a half a pound is fine. I mean, of course, the more you have, the more they're going to reproduce and make castings. Even got my four worm experiment going in these 4 gallon 16 quart totes. You know, if you were going to start with something small with a dozen or so worms, that would be fine. And I mean, they are reproducing, making cocoons already. So that's just a basic rundown. If you're gonna feed your food scraps, it's a great way to reduce what's going into the landfills. You know, anything from bad head of lettuce or half a head of lettuce to celery. A lot of produce goes bad quick. Hard to find good bananas. We all know they go bad quick. So if you got, whether it's just banana peels or bananas, they're great. Seems like they like sweets better. I do blend up my foods. A lot of people don't. But the smaller the pieces, you know, the easier it is for them to eat and break down. The microbes help break down the food. That's all I can think of for now. Quick little rundown and basics. If you got any questions, please leave them in the comment. Got any suggestions for future videos, please hit that thumbs up for me. And until next time, have a great day.